welcome to Prime Family Alert. This segment of Prime Family Alert focuses on how not to raise spoiled brats. In my consulting practice, I work with many families, both high net worth and those less affluent. I'm constantly amazed at how nonchalant or even downright neglectful the parents are in their children's fiscal education in both of these income groups. Despite the fact that many of the well-to-do parents grew up in less affluent families themselves, and their parents taught them to be fiscally responsible, which by the way probably contributed to their ability to create wealth, they are more often than not raising their children in precisely the opposite to the way they were raised. Practices that foster fiscal responsibility, such as assigned chores, allowances, and the attitude that money doesn't grow on trees, are often completely absent from these families. The typical excuses I hear range from, "I don't want them to go through what I had to go through," to, "My children work so hard, I don't want to place more of a burden on them," to, "Heck, they're only young ones, let them enjoy themselves." Even more interesting is the fact that such practices are, in my experience, becoming more commonplace among families of more moderate incomes. Many families who clearly lack the means to live high on the hog are nonetheless trying to live an aspirational life well beyond their means and sending commensurate messages to their children about money and what it takes to become a successful, happy, and contributing adult. Of course, a popular culture that has a truly toxic view of wealth contributes further to the distorted and destructive relationship that families have with money. When the two most powerful forces, parents and popular culture, send the same harmful messages about money to children, what chance do they have to develop a healthy relationship with money and acquire the necessary maturity and physical skills to survive and thrive in the real world in which most of us live? I can assure you that any of these attitudes, from well-intentioned to cavalier, is a recipe for financial doom for children. Yes, children is a time to play, have fun, and not have to face the demands of adulthood. At the same time, childhood must be a time to prepare children for adulthood. In other words, you must actively train your children to be adults. Here's how to think about it. Consider all the attitudes and skills necessary to be a functioning adult with a healthy relationship with money. For example, delayed gratification, respect, responsibility, decision-making, and discipline. Now ask yourself whether you're instilling those attitudes and teaching those skill sets to your children. Unless you plan to leave your children with a very large trust fund and no expectations of doing anything substantial or meaningful in their lives, you are leaving them wholly unprepared for the real world. Clearly, no parent intends to raise their children this way, whether wealthy or not, but it is a real risk when money, its acquisition, accumulation, and expenditure becomes a defining value and force in a family. I've known and worked with moneyed families who absolutely spoil the children rotten, and the kids are worse for it. At the same time, I've also known and worked with other families of means who raise children who are responsible, respectful, caring, and compassionate, and who are making real contributions to the world. What distinguishes these two groups is not the dollar figure on line 37 of the IRS Form 1040. Both are very large. The real issue is the underlying values associated with wealth and the relationship that these families have with money. In the former group, the accumulation of wealth is an end in itself. The riches are used largely for selfish purposes, specifically conspicuous consumption, status, and power. In the latter group, wealth is amassed as a byproduct of passion and hard work, and with a grand purpose in mind, based on their most deeply held values. The desire to use that affluence to enrich their own lives and for the good of others. This money is used to express values such as education, travel, culture, and philanthropy. Clearly, the messages that children from each of these types of families receive about money are vastly different, and they will have very different experiences with money and develop very different values, relationships, and practices with money. And these apply to both wealthy families and those with less means. So the question is, how can parents avoid raising spoiled brats and develop fiscally responsible children who have a healthy relationship with money? At the heart of this issue is teaching children several essential values that impact their perspectives on money and provide them with real-life experiences in which they can learn to use money in a healthy way. Perhaps the most basic value about money that children can learn is that it should not define them. Instead, who one is, how one behaves, and how one treats others, rather than, for example, what one drives or wears, should determine their value as people. The value of responsibility is also highly relevant, namely the notion that their actions have consequences, and that children must be held accountable for their actions, both good and bad. Yet, what is a better definition of spoiled brat than children who, whether they do good, bad, or nothing, they get what they want? Ironically, many parents who learn the lesson of responsibility early in their lives and that contributed to their success don't seem to want to teach their children the same vital lessons. And we can't forget gratitude. Some children see themselves as truly fortunate, in which they feel that they're the recipients of good fortune and feel real gratitude for what they're given. In contrast, other children feel entitled because they expect what they've been given and they feel that it's their right. Certainly, two children can be given the same thing, and child A says, "Thank you so much," and child B says, "Is this all?" These divergent attitudes about money will undoubtedly express themselves in all aspects of their lives, through childhood and into adulthood. Children also need to learn that money, like most things of value in life, is earned rather than, as I just suggested, a right or entitlement. Lastly, other values and skills, including delayed gratification, respect, discipline, and decision-making, also have a powerful influence on the attitudes and relationships that children develop around money. Parents can communicate these values through discussions, teachable moments, and life experiences. But the reality is that actions speak far louder than words, and parents must live those values if they want their children to adopt them. And of course, it's an uphill battle when children walk out the front door and are confronted with a noxious culture of money that's trying to teach your children the exact opposite lessons, and peers in other families with different values and perspectives on money than your own. This discussion of values leads into 3 practical strategies for raising children who are not spoiled brats: chores, allowances, and summer jobs. One of the great lessons that children can learn, clearly missed by spoiled brats, is that there are no free rides in life, at least not the life that most of us lead. Everyone has jobs they must fulfill to ensure the effective functioning of a family or any group. One of the most powerful ways to teach children this lesson is for parents to assign age-appropriate chores that they must fulfill as members of the family unit, or to earn extra money for themselves. Could there be a better way for children to learn fiscal responsibility than for them to have money of their own to do with it as they choose? Charles Dickens said it so well: annual income £20, annual expenditure £19.6. Result, happiness. Annual income £20, annual expenditure £20.06. Result, misery. Allowances are the place where that relationship to which Dickens alludes can be established. By the time children enter their teen years, they're getting scarily close to entering the real world. So that's the time to really expose them to life in the real world through summer jobs. Unfortunately, summer jobs seem to be a dying breed these days for many children, as more and more parents worry too much about their children's futures. In response to this anxiety, they send their kids to summer academic camps. Doesn't computer camp sound so fun? Or internships, for example, at law firms, hospitals, or in businesses, that they think will better prepare them for college or career. But real summer jobs are one of the most powerful experiences teenagers can have, and offer benefits far greater than the resume-burnishing summer jobs that so many teenagers are being forced into these days. I think manual or mundane labor is an especially good learning experience for teens, particularly in the privileged and insulated world in which many kids are now raised. Nothing like 10-hour workdays, boredom, blisters, and a sore back to give teenagers some perspective. Parents feel so much anxiety these days about their children's futures, particularly their financial futures. Whatever else parents do, teaching children healthy values, attitudes, and skills related to money and fiscal responsibility are some of the best things they can do to ensure that their children are prepared for whatever lies ahead in the uncertain world in which they will live. And raising children who are responsible, hardworking, and considerate, rather than who are spoiled brats, is just icing on the cake. I'm Dr. Jim Taylor for Prime Family Alert.